Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to look at Secret Invasion and do a little prep work for this exciting series. And what I mean by that is, rumors have certainly made it clear that a good portion of the show will take place during the 5 year blip. You know, the period of time after Thanos snapped away half of the universe, let alone half of the world and its population. So that's very exciting because we've not seen a lot of what happened during that 5 year period. So real exciting the series is taking place there, but that raises the question then who was blipped and who wasn't, because technically anyone who wasn't blipped could appear in a cameo during Secret Invasion. So let's dive right in and look at the question of who was blipped and who wasn't in prep for Secret Invasion. Now, Marvel put out this really cool graphic around the time that Endgame was going to release to kind of remind people of what we saw in Infinity War. Everybody on the left is somebody who we saw survive the blip, and everybody on the right is who we saw succumb to the blip and get snapped away. So really helpful, really interesting, although it did actually give some information beyond what was in Infinity War. I mean, Captain Marvel, of course, didn't really appear in Infinity War. She was called in Infinity War, but didn't appear. She appeared in her movie, and then in the end credit scene, we see her showing up to help the Avengers that were not blipped. Ant-Man, of course, we didn't really learn his fate until Ant-Man and the Wasp, when we learned that he was stuck in the quantum realm during a portion of the blip, and then, of course, escaped from there to help the Avengers. Pepper Potts, we didn't see her fate in Infinity War, but of course we saw her show up during the 5 year period in Endgame. Now, Valkyrie was an interesting situation. You know, people wondered, did she die during the attack by Thanos at the beginning of Infinity War on the Asgardian ship? And it turns out, no. She must have helped, been part of the half of them that got away. And then, of course, she appeared in Endgame during the 5 year period running New Asgard. So that was cool. Wong was a real mystery. Honestly, I assumed he had been blipped because he showed up at the end of Endgame, you know, coming out of the portals and helping. But as we learned in No Way Home, he actually wasn't blipped. He was around during the 5 year period. And, of course, with Stephen Strange being blipped, that meant that Wong became Sorcerer Supreme. And as Stephen said, it's on a technicality, but it's still official. So Wong did survive, and so could technically show up during Secret Invasion. That would be cool. Happy Hogan is interesting. We didn't learn his fate in Infinity War, and really we didn't learn his fate even in Endgame, but in Far From Home, it was officially canonized that he survived the blip because he said he grew out his beard during the blip. So again, this graphic was really cool because it actually gave us some information we hadn't even seen in the movies yet. Then on the flip side, it showed us who snapped away. Now, 3 of the characters actually physically died, Gamora, Vision, and Loki. So it was really everybody who, I guess, if you will, died in any fashion during Infinity War. But, there was more information beyond Infinity War because we didn't learn about Hope Van Dyne until Ant-Man and the Wasp. Shuri, we didn't technically officially learn until we saw her face showing up on the monitors in the beginning of Endgame. And that does raise the question, actually, who was running Wakanda? You know, there's a lot of interesting things to learn about, what's happened with Wakanda when Wakanda Forever comes out. With both T'Challa and Shuri being blipped, you know, who ran Wakanda for those 5 years? And then, of course, it's going to have to deal with, after both of them came back, of course, Chadwick Boseman died in real life, and so Black Panther's death will be addressed in the movie. So, man, Wakanda has been through a lot. So it should be really exciting to see them have to cover all this ground in Wakanda Forever. And then there's Nick Fury. Nick Fury. His situation is very interesting. Let's dive into him a little bit more, because we learned in Far From Home that Nick Fury has been off-world and running S.W.O.R.D. So the question is, how long has he been off-world? Additionally, we learn, from rumors at least, that Nick Fury is going to be showing up during that 5 year period where half the universe was blipped. Well, if so, that means that at the end of Infinity War, it wasn't him that was blipped. It was very likely Talos pretending to be him, and of course, Talos' wife pretending to be Maria Hill. So then that raises the question, exactly how long has Talos been pretending to be Nick Fury? Now, we learned in the Captain Marvel movie that Fury does not like to eat toast that's been sliced diagonally. Well, then in Age of Ultron, he eats a sandwich that has been sliced diagonally. That's interesting. That could be an Easter egg hinting that it wasn't even Nick Fury that appeared in Age of Ultron, but instead was Talos. If that's the case, then it could be that after the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. in Winter Soldier, that Fury left the planet then and had Talos take over, and that Fury was forming and or running S.W.O.R.D. From that point forward. So lots of interesting things to learn about Fury. But one thing is certain, he was not blipped. That wasn't him. So let's look then at a summary of what we learned from that graphic from Marvel. Here's everybody who was blipped and everybody who survived. And notice I pulled out the 3 people that died since, they technically weren't blipped. They actually died. But we've actually learned a lot more about several more characters since Endgame and their fate, as well as there were some people that were just left off of that graphic. So Maria Hill, as we said, she was dusted at the end of Infinity War, or more likely, that was Talos' wife. Then we have Eric Selvig, who we learned at the beginning of Endgame from the monitors had been blipped. We have Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym, who, again, at the end of Ant-Man, we learned had been blipped. All of the Barton family tragically was blipped, which, of course, drove Hawkeye to become Ronin during the 5-year period. Aunt May, Ned, MJ, Betty, Flash, and even a few more of his friends all got blipped, along with Peter Parker, and we learned that in Far From Home. Monica Rambeau was blipped, which we learned in WandaVision. Wilfred Nagel was blipped, which we learned in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And the only reason this is worth bringing up is, if you remember, he was working on the super soldier serum, recreating it, and then he was blipped. Then when he came back, he picked up his work again, other than the fact that a lot of it had been stolen by the CIA. So the question is, what happened to that information? Now, it may not pick up that plot line in Secret Invasion. We may learn elsewhere. But very interesting. Certainly a dangling thread, and he would not have been around during the blip period, but his information was. So we'll see if that plays at all in Secret Invasion. Yelena Belova, we learned she was blipped during Hawkeye. Nicodemus West, we learned, was blipped during Multiverse of Madness. Then let's move into some theories. So everybody up to this point we know was blipped. We learned their fate in a movie or a TV show. Jane Foster, certainly it's a strong theory she was blipped, because in Thor Love and Thunder, she comes up with a completely different amount of time that she and Thor had broken up. She said like 3 to 4 years, and he gave a more accurate amount of time, which was clearly 5 years longer. So that raises the question then, is Jane's memory lost because she just wasn't here? She was gone. It kind of makes sense. So very likely she was indeed blipped. Ghost, Ghost doesn't have to have been blipped, but considering that Ghost needed the healing particles from the quantum realm and probably would not have had access to them during that period of time, it certainly would make more sense that she was blipped. We might learn more in the Thunderbolts, because it's been rumored she'll become a Thunderbolt, so maybe we'll learn more about that and how she survived during all this time. And speaking of the Thunderbolts, Thunderbolt Ross. I'm theorizing that he was blipped because, we didn't see him during the 5-year period coming after the Avengers. And you might say, well, of course not. I mean, half the world was gone. He would give up and leave them alone. Well, it is Thunderbolt Ross. So it's hard to imagine he would ever give up chasing after anyone who violated the Sokovia Accords, including Black Widow. When you add the fact that, unfortunately, William Hurt, the actor that portrayed Ross, has passed in real life, it's very likely they will just say he was blipped and explain why he doesn't appear during Secret Invasion. But you never know. Betty Ross, she was actually listed as being blipped in the script to Endgame, but it was never officially mentioned, although it's kind of cool to imagine that she was blipped, because that means the Hulk actually brought her back, brought his old girlfriend back. when he reversed the snap. That's kind of cool. Lady Sif, again, was in the script. Never confirmed, but that certainly would explain why she was gone all that time. And then Daredevil, as well as perhaps the other Netflix defenders, but certainly Daredevil was likely blipped. You know, it would explain where he's been all this time. It would explain why he had to get his life back together and why he's only finally now reappearing. But also, as we discuss some of the people that survived, you'll see why it's important, I think, that Daredevil not have been around during the 5-year period. So we'll touch on that a little bit more. But my theory is that he was blipped, and potentially Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Punisher, they might all have been blipped. But certainly, I think Daredevil was. So let's look at the survivors. We did learn in Infinity War that M'Baku survived, so he may well have helped run Wakanda, or T'Challa's mom may have done it, the Queen. So we'll see. We'll learn in Wakanda Forever, but M'Baku was not snapped. Cassie Lang, we learned in Endgame, was not snapped. Korg and Meek showed up during Endgame, during the 5-year period. So that means they weren't snapped. I doubt they will show up in Secret Invasion, but that'd be cool. I'm game if they want to show up. Maria Rambeau, Monica's mom, we know was not snapped and instead actually died of cancer during the blip. In fact, it would be interesting to have her appear in Secret Invasion because she and Nick Fury were good friends from the Captain Marvel movie. So, good chance she might show up and give a little bit more of her continuity. The Eternals, I guess it could be more in the theory realm, but very likely were not snapped because they're not human. It doesn't seem that Thanos was snapping anything but humanity, or living beings, I should say. We know Christine Palmer survived the snap because in Multiverse of Madness, she found somebody else and fell in love and was getting married then in Multiverse of Madness, but she met her new husband during the blip. Maya Lopez and her father, they're very interesting here. So Maya's father was killed by Ronan, and of course, Ronan was only around during the blip, so therefore he had to have died during that 5-year period, meaning that he didn't get blipped. Likewise, Maya, therefore, didn't get blipped. And because the Kingpin tipped off Ronan, it's very likely the Kingpin did not get blipped. And now we go back to Daredevil again. This is why I think it's important Daredevil did get blipped, because Daredevil kind of had Kingpin on the ropes at the end of season 3. Had him with information he was going to use if Kingpin ever got in his way again, and really had the Kingpin trapped. Well, if Daredevil's gone, if he blips, then Kingpin's kind of free to rebuild his empire. Plus the fact that he apparently tipped off Ronan about Maya's father pretty much establishes that Kingpin had to have been around during the blip. Now, Kate Bishop and Shang-Chi and Katie, this is more in the theory realm, but if you do the math on their ages, it just doesn't work if they were blipped. So very likely they're going to have been around during the blip. And Moon Knight. Moon Knight's passport shows up at one point, and the date is very clearly shown, and that date is after the blip in late 2018. Additionally, it was said that he had his powers for a while. So, I mean, he technically could show up as Moon Knight even during Secret Invasion. Very doubtful, but nonetheless, he apparently was not snapped or blipped away. And then there's Mr. Harrington, only including him for comic relief, but as we learned in Far From Home, he was not blipped, nor was his wife, although his wife pretended to be blipped so she could run off with the hiking instructor, and he actually held a funeral for her, but she wasn't dead. They thought she was dead, so they held the funeral, but she was actually hiding. Pretty funny. It shows how people use the blip to their own advantage. So there you have it. This is everybody that at least I'm aware of that was blipped or survived, either that we know for certain or that there's a strong theory. But I'm interested in your comments. Did I miss anybody? Should anybody show up on either of these two lists as blipped or survived? And then for anybody who survived, do you think they'll show up in Secret Invasion during that portion of the show that deals with the 5-year blip. It'd be pretty cool if they did. Will anybody who was blip show up and pretty much therefore be obviously a Skrull? In fact, just in general, who do you think from this list might be a Skrull? Or maybe who's not on this list might be a Skrull? And then are you excited about the series? I'm really excited. What do you think we'll learn about Nick Fury and how long he's been off-world? So leave your comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts. You can like this video, subscribe to the channel, and you can check out more videos. And in the meantime, continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe.